He was just a depressed teenager sitting alone in a dark room. No one knew how bad it really was, not his teachers, not the kids at school, not even his mother. And then, one night, he picked up a dusty DVD from a forgotten shelf. Rocky. What started as a random movie choice turned into a lifeline. A fictional fighter reached through the screen and spoke straight to a broken soul. What happens next not only shocks his entire school, but reaches someone he never dreamed would notice him. Before we continue this story, tell us where you're watching from. And if you believe in stories that can change lives, subscribe to the channel. Because tomorrow at 6 p.m., we've got something powerful coming your way. He almost didn't make it to 17. Not because of drugs, not because of violence, but because he couldn't find a reason to wake up anymore. Every morning felt like lifting concrete with his bare hand. Every night he wondered what it would feel like if it all just stopped. Jake Morgan lived in a quiet corner of a quiet town in Ohio. His house stood at the end of a street that curved away from the world. Like it too wanted to disappear. His room was a tomb of silence, the walls lined with peeling posters of video games he no longer played. The window was always shut, the curtains drawn, and the air, it didn't move unless the TV hummed. Jake hadn't spoken more than a dozen words to his mother in the past week. Not out of rebellion, but because everything inside him felt disconnected. He was 17, but there was nothing young about his eyes. But on a night in late October, when the leaves scraped across the sidewalk like tiny regrets, and the wind carried a whisper of cold that felt too honest, he reached for something he hadn't touched in months, his father's old DVD collection. He didn't know why. Maybe boredom, maybe instinct, maybe desperation. He picked one at random, Rocky. He'd heard of it, never watched it. Boxers didn't mean much to him. He wasn't athletic. He hated gyms. But something about the beat-up case, the faded image of a man with his arms raised in victory, it pulled him in. He pressed play. Therefore, everything changed, not all at once, not in some magical Hollywood montage, but scene by scene, round by round, Jake felt something stir. It wasn't hope, not yet. It was something smaller, quieter. Like a hand tapping lightly on a door, he didn't cry, he didn't cheer, he just watched. Watched as a nobody from Philadelphia got knocked down and stood up. Watched as a man who had nothing decided he was still worth. Jake sat there long after the credits rolled, the TV casting a pale blue across it. For the first time in months, he opened his notebook, once filled with dark scribbles and empty phrases, and wrote a single line. It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. He underlined it 3. The room smelled faintly of dust and old fabric. The leather couch he sat on creaked every time he shifted. The cold from the window behind him tried to get in, but he didn't care. The world outside didn't exist. Only Rocky, only the fight, only the echo of something powerful enough to cut through the numbness. Over the next few days, Jake watched every Stallone film he could find. Rocky II, Rocky III, Rambo, Balboa, Creed. He wasn't watching characters. He was watching versions of himself, broken, bruised, but still breathing. And that's when it started. The change. But not everyone noted. His mother still walked past his room like it was haunted. His teachers still marked him as quiet, disengaged, probably lazy. And the boys at school, well, they still pushed their jokes into his locker like knives. Therefore, Jake stayed invisible. But now, invisibility wasn't emptiness. It was armor. It was silence before the bell. On the 7th night, after watching Balboa for the 2nd time, Jake stood in front of his bedroom mirror. He raised his fists, like a fighter, but like someone remembering how to his reflection, but there was a spark behind, a flicker, a dare. That night, he went to bed without locking the door. And the next morning, something happened that he hadn't expected in a long time. He woke up and wanted to. But just as he thought the fight was his alone, someone else stepped into the ring, and they had some. Jake's world didn't change overnight, but he did start noticing the cracks in it. He walked the same school halls, past the same lockers, endured the same muttered jokes and sideways glances. But now, there was a difference. He was watching them back, not in anger, in silence, like a boxer studying his opponent. His hoodie still covered his face most days, and he still sat in the back row of every classroom. But behind that quiet posture, something was building. Not rage, not revenge, readiness. One morning in English class, something unexpected happened. Reynolds, gray hair and a loose ponytail, denim jacket, over a dress shirt, the kind of teacher who quoted Whitman and Springsteen in the same sentence, stood before the class and said, "New assignment, essay topic, what saved you?" Doesn't have to be dramatic, just honest. Jake didn't move. He stared at the page like it had insulted him. "What saved you?" The class groaned, pencils tapped. A girl whispered something cruel behind him. Jake just stared at the blank sheet in front of him. He hadn't planned to say anything. He rarely did. But something inside whispered, "Write it down, just for you." Therefore, that night he did. He wrote about Rocky, about Rambo, about watching men who were beaten to the ground and chose to stand up anyway. He wrote about the quote he kept reading every night before bed, about getting hit and moving forward. He didn't try to sound smart. He didn't care about grammar. He just bled onto the page. Flashback. The night. Everything fell apart. 2 months before discovering Rocky, Jake had nearly taken a bottle of sleeping pills. He had lined them up like soldiers, but he didn't swallow them, not because he was afraid to die, but because he wasn't sure it would matter if he did. And then his mom knocked, just once, just to ask if he wanted leftover pizza. He didn't answer, but it was enough to make it. Back in the classroom, Mr. Ahil Reynolds read Jake's essay in silence. He didn't hand it back with the other. Instead, after the bell, he looked at Jake and said only, "That's the first time you've spoken in this class, and you didn't even open your mouth." Jake nodded once, unsure how to keep writing. Whatever you're doing, it's working. Jake didn't say thank you, but that night he wrote another quote in his notebook. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. He underlined that too. Karen Morgan loved her son, but grief had turned her into a ghost with a nursing badge. She worked 12-hour shifts and came home exhausted, often too tired to cook, to talk. She missed the man her son could have been, but mostly she missed the boy she used to hold when he had nightmares. She didn't know what was going on with Jake. Every time she asked, he'd say, "I'm fine," and she'd nod, because she didn't know what else to do. But one night she passed by his door and heard something strange. Not silence, not video games, a voice, deep, gravelly, saying something about life, pain, getting up again. She peeked through the crack in the door and saw him, sitting cross-legged, writing furiously in a notebook. On the TV, Rocky IV played in the background. She didn't interrupt. She just stood there. Therefore, the next morning, she left a note at his, "I made pancakes, if you're hungry." Jake stared at it for a full minute. Then he opened the door and came to the kitchen for the first time in weeks. Online, on a small Reddit thread titled "Rocky Changed My Life," Jake commented anonymously, 17 depressed, thought I was done. Stallone gave me a reason to try again, just wanted to say thanks." He didn't expect a reply. Ethan, an M78. Same dude, thought I was alone, guess we both stepped into the ring. They started messaging. Ethan was 19, lived in Minnesota, and had been through his own hell. They talked movies, quotes, life, silence. It wasn't therapy, it was brotherhood. Two underdogs fighting back. Jake told him about the essay. Ethan told him about his own notebook, full of Stallone quotes too. They laughed at how pathetic and powerful it all. Ethan said, "You ever think of sharing your story for real?" Jake answered, "Who would care?" Ethan replied, "More people than you think." A week later, Mr. Reynolds pulled Jake aside after class. "The district is running a writing contest," he said. "Theme is, what keeps you going? I submitted your essay. Hope that's okay." Jake blinked. "You what?" "It's good. Too good to stay in a desk." Jake didn't answer. He walked away slowly, notebook. That night he wrote, Maybe people don't have to know your whole story to feel part of it. And underneath that, keep punching. Yes. But when Jake's story reaches someone far beyond the gloves come off, and life throws its hardest punch yet. The call came on a Tuesday. Jake had just gotten home from school, tossed his backpack on the floor, and was halfway through rewatching Rocky III when his mom knocked softly and opened the door. "There's someone on the phone for you," holding the cordless like it was something sacred. Jake frowned. "Who?" She didn't answer, just handed it over. "Jake Morgan?" the voice. "This is Angela Myers. I'm the director of the Ohio State Student Writing Program. I wanted to congratulate you. Your essay's been selected as one of the 5 finalists for the state competition. We'll be publishing it next week." Jake sat frozen. The TV behind him kept playing. Clubber Lang was shouting threats. Jake couldn't hear him anymore. "You okay?" Angela asked. Jake finally managed, Yeah, I'm just, thank you. You'll receive an email soon with more details, and Jake, your words are powerful. Thank you for writing them." She hung up. He stared at the phone for a long time before placing it on his bed, and then he smiled. The following week, the essay was published on the state's youth writing website under the title, "How a Fictional Fighter Saved My Life." By noon, it had over 10,000 views. By evening, over 100,000. Comments poured in from all over the country, teens, parents, veterans, teachers. Some wrote their own stories. Others just said, "Thank you." Jake hadn't even told Ethan yet. When he did, Ethan replied, "Told you, the world needed your voice." Jake was still trying to process it all when a new email landed in his inbox from PR Team, Balboa Productions. Subject, "Your essay reached us." Jake blinked. It was real. They'd read it. Inside, the message was brief but electric. "Hi, Jake. Someone on our team read your essay, and it made its way around the office. We just wanted to say, we're proud of you. Mr. Stallone read your words himself. His message, keep punching, kid. You're already winning. Stay strong. Balboa Productions." Jake sat motionless. Then he opened his notebook and added just one sentence. "He saw me. It was Ethan's idea. You should read the essay, on video, just your voice, just once." Jake hesitated. Cameras weren't his thing, but the thought lingered. He set up his mom's old phone on a stack of books, lit a single desk lamp, sat in silence for 10 seconds, and then he read, slowly, honestly, voice shaking. The video was 3 minutes long. He posted it to YouTube and forgot about it. 3 days later, it had 2.1 million views. But with visibility came exposure, therefore came backlash. Some classmates mocked him, said he was faking it for attention. Some even posted clips of the video with cruel edits, cutting his voice over meme music. Jake felt the old weight creeping back in. Doubt, shame, the ache in his chest that told him maybe silence was safer. Karen saw him shut down again. She sat beside him that night with a bowl of ice cream and said, "Fame doesn't always feel good, but the truth, that always matters." She placed a sticky note on his notebook before she left. It read, "You stood up. That's more than most do." Jake didn't sleep much that night. Ethan called him on a shaky video chat. "I never told you," he said, "but I tried to kill myself last. Pills, same as you." Jake didn't breathe. "I survived, barely, and I didn't think anything could pull me out. But man, then I read your post. That night, I rewatched Rocky II and cried for the first time in months." He looked straight into the screen. "You saved me, Jake." Jake wiped his eyes and whispered. The next day at school, a classmate shoved Jake in the hallway, mocking him for crying like a little Rocky wannabe. Jake didn't fight back. He didn't have to. Mr. Reynolds saw it. And this time, so did the principal. Jake was pulled into the office, but not for punishment, for protection. Karen was called. She arrived breathless, thinking he'd done something wrong. Instead, she was shown the essay printed and pinned to the school's main bulletin board, framed. Jake just stared at it. 2 weeks later, Jake received an invitation from the Ohio Youth Mental Health Foundation to speak at their annual awareness event. "You'll be the closing speaker," the email said. We believe your story can save lives." Jake laughed out loud. Him? A speaker? But then he looked around his room, the DVDs, the notebook, the sticky note, the quiet power of every punch he had taken, and survived. And for the first time ever, he said aloud to no one, "I'm ready." He stepped onto the stage. A crowd of hundreds stared back, and just before he spoke, he noticed one face in the front row. Someone he never imagined would be there. Jake's palms were sweating. He stood behind the curtain, gripping the microphone like a lifeline. The stage lights bled through the gap in the velvet, outlining the silhouette of an auditorium packed with students, parents, teachers, and strangers. He had rehearsed his words 100 times, but right now, they were gone. Just like the first time he heard Rocky say, "It ain't about how hard you hit." He needed something deeper than memory. He needed truth. The stagehand nodded. Jake stepped out. The spotlight hit him. The crowd hushed. He adjusted the mic. And then he saw him. Front row, sunglasses, baseball cap low, pulled just enough to hide. Sylvester Stallone, real, in the flesh. Jake's breath caught in his throat. Stallone nodded once. Subtle, solid, like a signal from one fighter to another. Jake exhaled. "My name is Jake Morgan," he began, voice trembling, "and I wasn't supposed to be here tonight." He paused. Not because of time, or travel, or nerves, but because, a few months ago, I didn't think I'd be anywhere anymore. He looked out at the sea of quiet, waiting. "I'm not famous, I'm not strong, I'm just a kid from Ohio who watched a movie one night, something break open." He held up the note. "This is my corner of the ring." He flipped through the page, showed the scribbles, the fragments of someone rebuilding himself, one line at a time. "I didn't fight with fit. I fought with silence, with the weight of my own thoughts, with the ache of being unseen." He looked back at Stallone, but one night, a man on a screen said something that changed everything. He closed his eyes and whispered it. "It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." There were tears, applause, stillness, but Jake wasn't done. After the event, the crowd surged to meet him. Photos, hugs, stories shared in whispers. Ethan flew in from Minnesota. They met for the first time, two boys who had saved each other without ever knowing how much. Karen stood nearby, hand on her heart, eyes full. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Later that night, back in the hotel room, Jake stood at the mirror. Same face, different eye. He raised his fists, not to fight the world, but to honor the one who had fought to be here. Back home, Jake sat on the porch swing, sunset burning the sky. Karen stepped outside with 2 mugs of cocoa. She handed one over. "You always loved these," when Jake smiled. "I remember." They sat in silence, the kind that I didn't know how to. I was afraid I'd say the wrong thing. Jake looked at her. "You didn't have to say anything. You stayed. That was enough." She placed a hand over his. For the first time in years, they just sat, together, real and okay. Jake opened the notebook to the last page. He didn't write a quote this time. He wrote a sentence of his own. "I didn't win every round, but I got up every time." He tore it out, taped it to his wall, right next to the Rocky poster. Then he closed the notebook. For now. He almost didn't make it to 17, but he did. And now he was heading into 18, not just breathing, but fighting, not with fists, with truth, with words, with light. You don't need to be a champion to inspire someone. You just have to get back up, even if no one's watching, especially then. Thank you so much for watching. Your time means everything to us, and we hope this story moved you as much as it moved us. If it did, please consider leaving a comment, sharing the video, and subscribing to the channel, because powerful stories deserve to be heard. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and never underestimate the impact of one small act of courage.